Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. And today we are talking about why is it that people are not backing your Kickstarter or your Indiegogo campaign. This is a common question I get and I'm answering it today for you. Okay, so why are people, for whatever reason, not backing your Kickstarter or your Indiegogo campaign? This is a very common problem. And it's something that can be a little bit frustrating. If you're in the middle of running a campaign and you're doing everything you can, you're promoting it, you're marketing, you're trying to do everything possible, right? To get this thing off the ground. And yet, no matter how much traffic you send, it is not converting. It's not happening. People aren't backing it for whatever reason. It's like, why? Why is that, right? What's going wrong? Well, today I want to get into some of the reasons why that is the case. Okay, so first of all, there are the things that are in the marketing side of the arena, things that are more in the way of how do you convey value, right? Marketing is all about perception. It's all about the perception of value. So there's things that are in marketing that could be going wrong. And then there's the actual product, right? And there's the actual solution that you've created to a particular problem. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is we're gonna talk about the marketing side, and then we're gonna get into the product-based side. So let's first talk a little bit about the marketing. When it comes to the marketing, there are many different elements that I outline in my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula. So one of the biggest elements of the Kickstarter Launch Formula is this idea of social proof, right? So social proof is you already have a little bit of funding in the campaign. Have you done a pre-launch? Have you built up a community a little bit beforehand to get some funding in the door? If you haven't done that, it's gonna be a lot harder, right? Going forward with your marketing. So if you're sitting there and you have maybe $5 that has been pledged to your Kickstarter, your Indiegogo, it's very unlikely that a random stranger who sees that is gonna be interested in watching your video, right? Because they're like, shouldn't there be more? It's almost like if you come across a product on Amazon, right? And that product doesn't have any Amazon reviews, or maybe it has one, and it's just kind of not that great of a review, you kind of are a little bit skeptical. It's like, I don't know, I'm kind of rolling the dice on this thing, right? I'm rolling the dice if this is actually gonna be a good product or not when I order it. So there's always a skepticism and hesitancy that accompanies that. And usually when it comes to crowdfunding, that translates into non-action. So if you don't have any social proof, number one, something to be aware of. Number two, if the actual page is too intellectual, it is very unlikely to convert. Now, why do we create intellectual pages? A lot of the times in the early stages of Kickstarter, it was a bit more intellectual where you'd be describing the project, the problem, the story, some of these more cerebral, abstract things that go into wanting to have a project, right, on Kickstarter. However, as it's aged and as Kickstarter has gotten older, it's become much more consumer-centric. And a lot of the pages that you'll even browse to nowadays that are really successful are very high focus on imagery, graphics, GIFs, video, right? There's a little bit less emphasis on text, and that's deliberate, right? So if you find that you have a campaign page that's a little bit too cerebral, relying on people to read, not really selling through those images or through GIFs or video, that's gonna be a bit less of a draw when it comes to getting people's attention and also converting them on that particular page. Another thing is when it comes to the campaign, the actual structure of your reward tiers, right? So let's just say that you have a campaign and you're selling a new generation water bottle, right? If you're selling the water bottle and then also swag, like hats and t-shirts and that kind of stuff, that was a little bit more popular in the early days of Kickstarter, but really doesn't go very much when it comes to nowadays. Most people are just focused on the key or the core product that you want to get made. So if your reward tiers, there are too many of them, or it's too complicated, or whatever it is that you're offering isn't resonating with the backers, and you're copywriting the writing on the reward tiers, the early bird tiers, or the limited quantity ones, or the time-related rewards, if they aren't there, then it can be much more difficult to get people to take action because they don't feel like there's a deal that's going on, right, with the super early bird reward tiers. Or they might feel like it isn't described very well. I don't really know what I'm getting when I support this tier. I don't know what I'm getting, man. Just tell me what I'm getting, Or they might be a little bit apprehensive if shipping is too much. Or they might be a little bit apprehensive about supporting this one because they're kind of confused. Does this water bottle include this or that? So there might be a little bit of confusion. That comes obviously with the marketing and the copy on the actual reward tier. In addition, if you're doing other things, let's just say you're running Facebook ads or you're promoting on YouTube or you're doing Google ads, these kinds of things, it could also be the way that you're framing it. So if people don't realize that they're going to be coming to a Kickstarter campaign page, they might be expecting to go to Amazon, or they might be expecting to go to a Shopify store, right, where they can order the product. But if it's to a Kickstarter, they might be a little bit confused. So there's also that awareness scale of who you're actually sending to this campaign. And that's obviously a marketing problem, is making sure that you have the right frame or the right lens through which people are viewing the project. And if they don't, that perception is off, they're not going to convert and they're not going to back your Kickstarter campaign. You might also just not even have enough people, right? So you have people that are buying and backing and supporting it, but you just don't have enough of them. So you need more. You need a more higher volume of traffic. So these are just some of the very basic marketing principles that you might not be thinking about, and I'm just really scraping the surface there. If you want to go in depth, you ever see that image of like an iceberg, right? And the iceberg is in the water, and just like a very small portion of the iceberg is above water, and there's all of this iceberg that's below the depths of the ocean that really is in its entire mass is almost below the ocean, maybe 80% of it. If you want to go into that, you want to get into really in-depth and deep, you should definitely pick up a copy of my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula, available on Audible, or you can book a one-on-one coaching call with me. We can talk a little bit more about your specific case, which you can find in the links in the description. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the product side of things, and then we can kind of discuss a way for figuring out whether or not, which one is basically going wrong. This YouTube video is sponsored by The Gadget Flow. The Gadget Flow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They're Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns. If you have a tech or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. Check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. On the product side of things, you have created a product, my friend, which solves a person's problem, right? There are lots of great problems out there in which you can solve. There are many different problems in our daily life that we have all the time. And some of those problems we've already created products for. And the really great business ideas are ones where we haven't even created a product yet for that particular problem, to solve that problem. So you've done that. Congratulations, first of all, because it takes a lot of work, right? But now that you've done that, the question is this a problem that people care about enough to be able to spend money to solve? Now, let that sink in for just a second. Is this a problem that people care about enough that they're willing to spend money to solve? There are a lot of great novelty items and products out there, but for people that experience those problems, sometimes it's not agitating them enough that they're willing to spend money to solve that problem. And maybe they'd rather just do like their own DIY solution, or maybe they just don't care. It's not a big enough problem for them. They don't care about solving it, So that's the first thing, is if you created a product but people are not willing to spend any amount of money to solve, it's going to be hard for you to sell them on that product. No matter how much you agitate the problem, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much people are consciously saying, yes, this is a problem in my life. If they're not willing to spend money to solve that problem, then they're not going to buy your product. Even if it's the lowest amount, if they're not going to spend money, they're not going to solve that. A great example for this might be masks, right? So before COVID hit, masks, surgical masks, and also cloth masks were nowhere in the United States. They weren't part of American culture at all. If you go to certain places in Asia or in Southeast Asia, you go to Thailand, people do wear masks. They wear surgical masks because of the pollution, right? Same thing with China. People wear surgical masks because of the pollution. However, you go to America, not the case, right? And you go to Germany, not the case. So there's certain areas in the world where maybe they experience that problem, and they might be willing to spend money on a mask to solve that problem. If you tried to sell a mask, let's say like 3 years ago in America, when there was no outbreak or no pandemic or anything like that, it would be really hard because people maybe can intellectually understand the need for a mask, and they might be like, okay, that's a good idea, but they're not actually willing to spend money to solve that problem. Now, let's just say the context of the situation has changed. So the environment has changed. Now there's a major pandemic. Now anyone can give you a virus. Anyone can, with their bacteria and with them just talking in the same room as you, can cause you to fall ill. All of a sudden, that little problem, which you intellectually understood maybe as an American, now viscerally you understand. Emotionally, you understand the consequences of not solving this particular problem. And all of a sudden, there aren't enough masks to go around. People are buying them like crazy. Why? Because now they value that problem and a solution to that problem, and they're willing to spend money to solve that problem. So you can kind of think of this almost as like a seesaw, right? Where it's how much do people care about the problem and how much do they care about spending money on solving the problem. So when something is really in the forefront of their mind and it is a problem and they're willing to spend money to solve it urgently, that's when things are going to be flying off the shelves and you really can't get enough inventory even to buy, for people to buy the products, right? And that's a good situation to be in if you are a business owner. On the flip side, if people don't care at all about the problem, they don't even want to spend money on the problem, they don't understand the value of it, and if they do, they're like, it's not really even a big issue for me, they're not going to spend money on your product. Another thing is that you've created a product, but the person recognizes the value of the problem, they're willing to spend money to solve the problem, but they don't want to spend that amount of money, right? They want a better deal. They don't want to spend so much money on this thing. And usually what they're going to say to you is, you know what, I just don't have the money, man. I can't spend it on this. This is too much. It's not in my budget. These are all excuses. If you actually look at the way that someone allocates their budget over time, they're spending thousands of dollars on home improvements. They're spending thousands of dollars on their credit card for things that they don't need. All that someone is saying when someone says your product is too expensive, all that they're saying is that based on what they know, they don't think that it's worth that amount of money. So there's two issues there. One is you can use marketing to change their perception. So maybe you can talk about the make and the model of the thing, the materials that it's made out of, the craftsmanship that goes into it, the whole story behind creating it, the ways in which it's going to solve all of these other issues in your life, and you can build up the perceived value of that product, right? If you're going to buy a Mercedes or you're going to buy a Porsche, you're going to buy a Rolls Royce, do you talk about this is such an overpriced car? No, it's a luxury car. You're buying it for the craftsmanship. You're buying it for the social capital, right? You're buying it because it is expensive. You want it to be expensive because it means that it's luxury, right? You're not thinking about the price because for you to go into a Mercedes dealer and be like, these should be cheaper, it's almost like you're going to be laughed out of that dealership because that's not the whole reason why someone buys a Mercedes. You buy it because it is an expensive car, right? So this is really just a problem of perception. If you look at very extreme brands like Supreme, right? Supreme is a skater brand which is super high quality and it's all about perception. They were selling a brick, literally a brick, a Supreme brick, and people were paying like 80 bucks and $50 for this thing. And they could just slap their label on anything and people are going to pay a premium for it, not even thinking about the fact that they can get made in Indonesia or these other countries for pennies on the dollar, right? They're not thinking about what it's made of. They're just thinking about the brand and the perception, the perceived value of the product, and they're rationalizing their purchasing decision in that way. And they think because they're spending more money that they're going to get something better necessarily, when really at the end of the day, it's all marketing, you know? So when it comes to this, that might be an issue that people are not taking action because of the perceived value as it relates to the price point. In other cases, it's not about perception. You can do everything you want, you know, when it comes to perception, but you just can't charge that much for this particular product category. For example, let's just say, you know, TVs, like flat screen TVs. If I came out with a TV and the TV was $100,000 it's just too much. It's too much for the product category. People aren't used to spending that amount of money on a TV. And even if you're a really, wealthy person, you're still gonna be like $100K for a TV. It better be an amazing TV, like life-changing TV, right? You're not gonna spend that much money for a plasma TV unless you're like ultra wealthy or something like that. So it just doesn't fit the product category. Same thing with your product category. Do a little bit of research and think, does this make sense given the particular product category? If I said, we're gonna make workout equipment a whole new way of replacing gym equipment, and we're going to make this available for $10, people are almost skeptical at that price point because it's like, how can you have quality workout equipment for only $10? Like it doesn't make sense unless it's just like a simple accessory. If you're like, it's closer to $200 range, you're like, okay, like I can see that, it makes sense, right? It depends on what it is and how it works and these kinds of things. So everyone has in their own mind, based on previous purchases, based on ads we've seen, based on what we've browsed on Amazon, we all have an idea of what things might cost. If you're selling a camera, and I'm like, I'm gonna sell you a camera, and this is $500 camera, and it's really high quality, right? It makes sense. It's in the price point. If I'm selling you a really high quality camera, and it's $50, you're like, kind of skeptical about that. So maybe you just can't, charge more for this particular product. So think a little bit about that, right? Is it the marketing that's causing people not to convert and you need either more traffic or better graphics or better photos or video or copywriting or ways of going out there and selling this? Or is it the fundamentals of the actual product that people are not converting or at the rate that you want to because of the price, because of the perceived value, or because of whatever it is that you're selling and it's not addressing a core problem in niche? That being said, if you're watching this video and you haven't yet started a Kickstarter campaign, the cool thing is you can figure this out ahead of time. You don't have to wait until you're live on Kickstarter necessarily to be able to figure out the answer to this question of, will people spend money for what I'm going to make? And you can actually go through a testing phase. So we could talk about this on a coaching call if you want to. It goes kind of beyond the scope of this particular video, but you can actually create a market test where you can verify that people will spend money for this product that you're thinking about. And maybe you have like a prototype, right? And you're kind of wondering, will people convert? You can actually figure out the answer to that question. It's really freaking cool. That being said, if you haven't yet, go and check out some of the links I got in the description. We have some great stuff, Kickstarter forum, a place, a community you can interact. We have my books, a lot of great other resources, my newsletter where I talk about advice when it comes to crowdfunding. You can leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you did like this content and at least some of the ways that we're trying to think about, is there an issue when it comes to conversion? Is there something that you can be doing differently? Or is it just the fact that you've made something that people don't want to buy, right? And this is, I think, very difficult, but I commend you so much for being willing to actually put yourself out there and run a Kickstarter campaign. Like it takes courage, man, to do this. And I really appreciate that you're willing to do that and to take a chance on creating something new in this world. I think that is amazing. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for listening to this video, and I will see you next time.